So Telstra is shutting off the 2G network on the 1st of December. That's confirmed, isn't it?
Yeah, as my understanding is that they will literally turn off the 2G network, which is, ultimately going to leave a few control rooms in the lurch, I guess, if they don't upgrade their systems to 3G. And that goes for customer equipment like alarm communicators and for the control room that are using GSM backup 3G voice communicators that they use for a backup channel on their receiver bank. So some control rooms are using, say they've got an FE900 or radionics or whatever it is. They've got a couple of lines on that receiver dedicated to some backup links in case they lose their ISDN or PSTN lines coming into the building. Their 13 number would overflow from those inbound lines into these GSM backup communicators to attempt to allow some alarms to be delivered.
Right, and that's been the standard, I guess, for overflow or failover, is via GSM?
I think people have just accepted that as part of something that they would have in a control room. But I think that if you look into the technology, what it's designed for and why it's used, it's a questionable way of doing things because of the lack of reliability, the fact that these 3G GSM voice communication channels are not designed for data calls, which is what alarm panels do. They're not doing a voice call. The system was designed for you and I to have a phone call together. It wasn't designed to talk in high-speed data. It's not designed for it, and unfortunately, people are using it with probably the misunderstanding or maybe a lack of awareness to how unreliable it is for sending, custom or standardized tones down a line. It's something that I think we need to educate people on, or help people understand at least what the technology is and why it's there.
I was just thinking while you're explaining that, that's going to surprise a lot of people. And I'd imagine you would have companies that are manufacturing these devices with GSM failover would argue the point that that's not right. Do you get that at all? Like, are you hearing the argument for why GSM is best?
To be honest, no, because I think even the people that would sell it or the technical people that would be passing the information on, they're not going to sit there and say, hey, this technology is bad, but they'll put a spin on it like, well, it's a backup link, or, well, it's only there in case, everything else goes down. Like these you hear these comments and it's like, but what about when it does happen? Does anyone stop and ask the question, okay, so I've lost all my PSTN lines. I've got these couple of, or a bank of GSM voice communicators now trying to deliver all my alarm traffic. Is that going to be reliable or is it not? Who's asking the question of how many alarms? Like, is anyone auditing this? Has anyone ever unplugged their lines and gone, let's see how this thing actually copes in a peak,
right?
Around closing time or around 2:00 in the morning? Let's have a look at how it really works. And people would be too scared to do it because they know that it's not going to work. It's not going to cope.
Is there empirical data at all that sort of has measured this, or it's not been done?
Yeah, well, look, there's been examples of, like the recent examples for the floods in South Australia where people have fallen over to these voice channel backups and their whole control room has gone down because it simply can't handle it. It couldn't handle the volume of data and it wasn't reliable enough to deliver the data. So yes, it has been tested in extreme cases, but unfortunately that's at the point in time where it's too late. You've gotten to the point now where the unexpected's happened. I've lost all my lines, and then, well, according to them, it was unexpected that their GSM backups wouldn't work. But really, I think anyone with a good technical background would know you can't run a whole control room off a couple of GSM backups. It's not going to work. It just will not work.
Are a lot of control rooms doing that though?
Yeah, I think quite a lot of people are, because they're either not aware of the problem, which is what I find most common, is that they're just not aware that if their PSTNs go down, that it's not going to probably do the job they think it is, or it's not going to get the throughput they think it's going to get. And yeah, I guess the other thing is, it's a backup. You get that same sort of comment. Oh, it's just a backup. We don't have to worry about that right now. But when the time comes to worry about it, there's going to be more than worry, because it's not going to perform anywhere near to the level of expectation.
Yeah, well, I heard the feedback from Adam Whitaker at Sam's, I think the name of his business is, and he was saying that, because they were using Suretek's and Telepath network and not relying on the GSM, tens of thousands of alarm events were delivered
Yeah.
without any problems. And yeah, we'll
Well, it was
go
actually, I think we did it was well over 100,000 events
right.
during the outage. Yeah, they went through and yeah, no problem at all. I mean, and they're all logged too. So, you can log into the portal because they've got our services there. They can log into the portal. They can see all the events. They get a report. It tells you how many events went through at the time. And you can just see on the graph that it's plodding along nicely, doing nothing. Then all of a sudden, the graph goes through the roof because all the traffic went from going directly to their receiver banks, I believe 2 sites, and then straight into our receiver banks and then back into their control room.
So someone like Adam, if he'd just been relying on GSM and he wasn't using IntelliPath, what would that have meant for his business, do you think?
Oh, he would have been offline, just like the other clients that contacted us and said, help, help, help. We've got a major problem here. Our control room is completely offline. Yeah, I think in Adam's case, the amount of volume of calls that they do, they'd have to have a huge amount of GSM type voice backup systems to even come close to handling their traffic. Whereas with IntelliPath, it's a standard receiver bank on a standard set of copper lines into the building, but it's routed via IP back to their control room. So, transparent to them, it made no difference. Their operators were sitting on the seat and the same alarm traffic, the same time, no delays or anything. It just instantly and automatically transferred all their calls through SurePol network straight back into their control room without them even noticing.
So if GSM is, as a failover method, you're saying it's relatively unreliable. Will we see improvement with upgrading? Is it an upgrade to 3G after the 1st of December when they all have to move to 3G?
Yeah, so these control rooms will have a modem type device, like a box with a phone line in and a antenna on the other side, and that'll plug into their receiver bank. So what they'll have to do if they're 2G is just pull those out and put a 3G version of that in there. But that's not going to solve the problem. The core of the problem is that wireless voice channel that's being used on whether it's 2G or 3G will have the same problems. They're just not designed to handle or cope with that volume of calls.
So it's the technology itself then that's the problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not the generation. It's not whether it's 2G or 3G or whatever.
No, there's no huge difference between the two. Absolutely not. We actually had a client swap out their 2G for 3G, and yeah, the same problems occurred. So it's definitely not the technology base. It's the fundamental issue of it's a wireless path and it's not designed for high-speed data. An alarm panel's not sending voice data like a voice channel. It's sending actual data down the line, and it's too fast for these voice channels to handle reliably. It can do it, sure. Like you can get most alarm calls will go through. You can put one on a bench, and that's what people do. They bench test these things and go, oh yeah, I've sent a couple of alarms through it. It's fantastic, or they'll get one alarm panel type and it'll be a, generic whatever panel off the shelf, and they'll send test report every hour for a few days and go, yeah, look, it's fantastic. But when you're a control room that is spread out and you've got all these different types of panels, you've got all these different types of alarm communicators, there's all different types of technology talking through that channel. While some of it might be reasonably reliable, a lot of it is absolutely not reliable. And nobody sits down and analyzes this. You're not getting, a control room manager or owner or a bureau. They're not analyzing this stuff every day. There's guys like us doing that. And we've looked at the technology and we knew there needed to be a workaround. We knew there needed to be something developed to overcome this disaster recovery.
Because in the early days of Suretek, you guys were offering GSM redundancy, weren't you? Like everyone else.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. We were well aware of the shortcomings of it, and that's why we designed IntelliPath. We needed something that was reliable, something that could handle a large control room volume of calls, or even multiple large control rooms. We can handle so many events going through the system because there's multiple receivers, there's multiple ISDNs. We've got so many lines, we've got so much infrastructure there that can be expanded out even if it got beyond its current capabilities. There's no limit to how many we could potentially handle. And unfortunately for a control room, there is a limit. If they've got a GSM backup or a 3G backup type arrangement, you're limited to how many lines have you got. And maybe that's the question these guys need to ask. If I was a bureau, maybe I'd go back to my control room and say, okay, so if you don't have IntelliPath, what have you got? You've got 16 lines coming into two FE900s. You've got 2 lines of that, or let's say 4 lines of that dedicated to these GSM backups. you have to realize straight away that there is no possible way you could have 16 lines, 4 of those cut out for GSM backups. Like, how is that going to, it doesn't even make sense to, like, when you start thinking about it, okay, you lose your PSTN or your ISDN goes offline or something, or a backhoe rips out, or you get floods like in Adelaide or whatever it is that happens. You're going to now try and route all that information through a couple of GSM backups. I mean, you must be aware straight away that that's not going to work.
It's like trying to drink from a fire hydrant, isn't it, really?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah, I was talking to a monitoring station, and a major Telstra cable was dug up. And so they lost all their PSTN lines coming in. Now, they were with Suretek's IntelliPath network. Then they moved away. They lost all their, thousands and thousands of alarm events. He just wasn't receiving anything. He was saying they contacted Suretek urgently, and they switched them over to the IntelliPath network, and everything was running, as though the PSTN lines were up and running as per normal. So I think that's testimony to the fact that it does work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the technology, it's so proven. It's been around for such a long time, and we've had so many people. It's in the hour of need. That's when it matters, and it's like insurance. You can't burn your house down and then go, "Can I have insurance now?" You need to be ready and say, "Okay, what if my cable into my control room breaks? What if I've got even 2 control rooms and something goes wrong? The receivers fail, whatever it is.
Right.
People have entire receivers fail." And the other thing with IntelliPath, we generate these reports, right? So we see a mass volume of traffic going to control rooms. But we also see that even a decent control room with a lot of lines, they do get congestion and it does overflow. So forget about just, okay, you've got a catastrophic failure. That's something that it absolutely can and does handle. What a lot of people don't realize is that even a decent or larger control room with a large bank of receivers and lines, even they get congestion, and it will overflow and still deliver that straight into their control room. So, if you've got 16 lines into your control room, you instantly get another 16 with IntelliPath. So if you do get congestion, there's a storm and you're getting all these AC fails, there's power outages, just opens and closing. Sometimes we see peaks every night, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, when all the people's test reports go through. Their receiver banks can't handle it. Alarm communicators are quite slow and they're quite inefficient at making calls. So if you suddenly get 10,000 calls hitting 16 lines, you're gonna lose some of those calls. But as soon as people put IntelliPath in, that all of a sudden they all go through on that first call because they hit IntelliPath and they still get delivered.
So I guess with what you're saying, with Telstra shutting off the 2G network on the 1st of December, if the control room's running IntelliPath, it's not going to matter.
Absolutely not. No, there'll be no impact at all.
So why aren't the other providers offering something like IntelliPath? What's?
I believe we have patents on it, so
right.
Nobody else is allowed to do it.
Right.
But yeah, we've had patents on it for a long time. We've refined the technology down to being absolutely reliable, and we've had people have long-term outages of weeks or months where they've reliably used our service and not missed a single beat. So yeah, there's no comparison, I guess.
Okay. And for bureaus that are reselling the service, how do they, does Suretek have a list of control rooms that are reselling IntelliPath? I mean, how do they find out who was offering that?
Their control room should know, and if not, they can call through to Suretek and one of the guys can look up their details. But essentially, if your 13 number in some way is related to Suretek and you've got the SurePol gateway in the control room, yeah, it's just a matter of us configuring, if it's not already, but configuring that. So when a 1.3 service is ported to Suretek, it is at that time that we configure all the overflows. So we do all that and we manage that process. So we make sure that all the routing is there and ready to go. But for people that, if you're a control room and you've got these 2G backups, put your normal lines back in, rip those things out, get a gateway and put that in, and you're instantly going to transform that control room to something with a reliable backup path. And, you've got that solution there ready to go. It's not a big deal to go from a GSM backup to IntelliPath.
Thanks for listening. For more information about any of the points discussed in this podcast, please contact us at suretech.com.au or call us on 1300 65 4433, and callers outside of Australia can call us at 612 8787 9865.